Assalamu alaikum. The topic of today's discussion is acid rain and chlorofluorocarbons. I am Dr. Shazaya Askilji from the Department of Botany, Division of Science and Technology, University of Education, Township, Lahore. So what is acid rain? Acid rain or acid deposition is a broad term that includes any form of precipitation with acidic components, such as most important one with reference to the acid rain are the acidic components, for example, sulfuric acid or nitric acid that fall to the ground from the atmosphere in the wet or the dry forms. This can include rain, snow, fog, hail, or even dust that is considered to be acidic. So, in the most simplified definition, what is acid rain? Acid rain is the rain that is more acidic than normal. It's spread and damage by involving weather, chemistry, soil, and all life cycles of plants and animals on the land, and from the acid rain present in the water. The oxides of sulfur in the form of sulfur dioxide and oxides of nitrogen are the major sources of acid rain. So this is a scale of the pH showing the basicity and acidity with reference to the value of pH. So we already know that pH 7 is neutral pH, which is for pure water, whereas at pH 4, all the fish die because of the acidic lake that has always the pH ranging from 4.2 to 4.5. So the acidic rain may range from 4.2 to 4.4. This is with reference to the environmental values which has been set up by the NEQS or EPDA department of the government. So accordingly, there are two types of the acid rain. Number one is the wet deposition, and the second type of acid rain is called as dry deposition. So if we differentiate between these two types of acid rain, wet deposition refers to the acidic rain, fog, and snow, whereas dry deposition refers to the acidic gases and the particles. There is another difference which shows that wet deposition, the acidic water flows over and through the ground, and it affects a variety of plants and animals, whereas about half of the acidity in the atmosphere falls back to the earth through the dry deposition. So these are the major two types of acid rain. So major causes of acid rain are burning of coal, oil, natural gas in most of the power stations that make electricity. They release sulfur dioxide gas directly without any treatment into our atmosphere. While burning of petrol and the oil in the vehicle engines gives off a lot of nitrogen oxide as gases that are mixed with the water vapor in the form of rainwater, producing weak solutions of all oxides of nitrogen and sulfur, which falls onto the ground in the form of acid rain. This is the mechanism of how the acid rain is formed. So these four are the major sources by which rain in the form of acid comes from the atmosphere to the ground. First source is the industry, then transportation is by means of vehicular transportation, vehicular emission, domestic by burning of coal, oil, electricity generation. All of these produces different type of gases that are noxious gases, hydrocarbons, nitrogen oxides, and sulfur dioxides. These sources emitting these noxious gases into the atmosphere. Then they will then transform these nitric oxides into the nitric acid and sulfur oxide into the sulfuric acid, and then they fall onto the ground in the two forms, in the two type of the acid rain. First one is called wet deposition, that is the acid rain and snow is in the form of wet deposition, in which there are mixed particles of the acids, sulfuric acid and the nitric acids. Whereas another form of these chemical transformation may comes to the ground and the dry deposition in the particulates and in the form of gases that may be mixed within these strong acids, and they produce the rains in the form of wet deposition. So there are many effects of the acid rain. The first effect of acid rain is called as non-living. It is further divided into the three categories: non-living things, living things, and onto the soil sediments. So first one was the effect of non-living things. The best example here I quote is the Taj Mahal in Agra that is suffering from the sulfur dioxide, sulfuric acid, and many other fumes and the pollutants which are released from the nearby industry. For example, Mathura refinery. Actually, Mathura refinery is the sixth refinery of the Indian oil located in the Mathura, Uttar Pradesh, India. The refinery processes low sulfur crude, imported low sulfur crude from Nigeria, and it has a very high sulfur crude from the Middle East. So acid rain caused extensive damage to the oldest buildings, statues, bridges, structural material of marble, as well as to the limestones. So this is actually the effect of acid rain on the non-living things, which are going to be eroded by these negative effects of the acid rain. Now comes category B, which is the effect on the living things, including all the human health. The most severe effects can be seen in the form of sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide gases, and many respiratory diseases in the human beings like asthma and chronic bronchitis. Chronic bronchitis is the inflammation, that is swelling and irritation of the bronchial tubes. These tubes are the airways that carry air to and from the air sacs in the lungs. The irritation of the tube causes mucus to build up. In this way, this chronic disease will appear with the passage of time, whereas asthma, as we all know very well, is a condition in which airways narrow or swell and produce extra mucus. This can make breathing difficult and trigger coughing, wheezing, and shortness of breath. For some people, asthma is the minor nuisance. Then they also produce tiny particles that cause difficulty in breathing for the human as well as for the animals. That will lead to affect permanently the lungs. On water animals, this acid rain increases the acidity of the lakes and the rivers, which is directly affecting our aquatic life in an aquatic ecosystem. Here you can see, due to acidity of water, all the fishes become tight and they come onto the edge of that river, ocean, or the lake. On trees and the soil, acid rain dissolves all the nutrients and the useful minerals for the tree to grow. They wash out within this rainwater so that the growth of the tree will be badly affected. And this also weakens the process of photosynthesis. Like the acidity of acid rain can directly affect the plant leaves necessary for photosynthesis, and it makes the soils unable to sustain plants as well. With a decline in the overall photosynthesis, the amount of carbon dioxide removed from the atmosphere as well as the generation of new oxygen is decreased. So in this way, this acid rain directly affecting the growth of the plants by weakens the process of photosynthesis. Then, according to the modern researches, this acid rain leaches down all the essential nutrients which are required for the growth of the plant, trees, crops, including potassium, calcium, magnesium, and many essential elements from the top layer of the soil, which is called as the fertile layer of the soil. When the soil is contaminated, these cereals, arable production crops will be affected. These acids activate aluminium from the soil, which leaches into the water, as a result of which all the aquatic life, including the fish, will become dead. Overall drinking water quality is affected badly by this negative effect of the acid rain. So there are many problems that has to be solved. For example, if we talk about the factories with the chimneys, they should have scrubbers and the chemical filters that removes impurities of sulfur from that smoke. So the amount of smoke produced by these factories through the chimneys will be free from any of these impurities. They can also be fitted with the special converters which remove the dangerous chemicals. So overall, all the factories and the industries, they should install specific scrubbers or the filters, or they should remove or treat their smoke before releasing them into our atmosphere to create all the pollution problems. Apart from the government, They need to spend more money on the pollution control projects, and government need to invest researching different ways of producing energy. So this is the animated video of how the acid rains are formed in our atmosphere and producing bad effect for all the human beings, animal life, and the plant life as well.
What is acid rain? Acid rain is any form of precipitation with high levels of nitric and sulfuric acids. It can occur in the form of snow, fog, and even dry materials that settle to Earth. Most acid rain is caused by human activities. When people burn fossil fuels, sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides are released into the atmosphere. These gases react with water, oxygen, and other substances to form sulfuric and nitric acid. Winds may spread these acidic solutions over hundreds of miles. After it falls to Earth, acid rain enters water systems as runoff and sinks into the ground. This can make water toxic to crayfish, clams, fish, and other aquatic animals. The rest of the food chain, including non-aquatic species such as birds, is often affected as well. Acid rain also harms forests by damaging trees and leaves, robbing the soil of essential nutrients, making it hard for trees to take water. By designing cleaner power plants and using fewer fossil fuels, we can reduce the number of pollutants that create acid rain. What?
So, as I have already explained, that acid rain is affecting badly the cereal crop productions. So these are the crops, grain crops that are cultivated for their edible starch grain, for example, wheat, maize, rice, barley, and millet. Pulse crops of the legumes family grown for their edible seeds, which are high in the protein content, like lentils, beans, and peas. So, as a result of which, many of these essential elements are leached down by the acids which are present and which comes to the ground in the form of acid rain. So these scrubbers, as I have already told, the factories should install the scrubbers. These are actually the pollution control devices that use liquid to remove particulate matter or gases from an industrial exhaust. The atomized liquid, typically water, entrains particles and pollutant gases in order to effectively wash them out from their gas flow. So this was all about the acid rain, different type of acid rains, and their negative effect on the living things, non-living things, on the trees, on the crops, and onto the soil. So our next topic is the chlorofluorocarbons and its effects. Chlorofluorocarbons are the non-toxic, non-flammable chemicals containing atoms of carbon, chlorine, and fluorine. They are used in the manufacture of aerosol sprays, blowing agents for making foams, and the packing materials such as solvents or as refrigerants. So this is the most simplified definition of CFCs, called chlorofluorocarbons. So we can say CFCs are a group of compounds which contain the elements like chlorine, fluorine, carbon. They are the colorless gases or liquids which evaporate easily. They are very unreactive and stable, are considered to be the non-toxic and non-flammable, and produce volatile organic compound, VOCs. So the properties of CFCs as commercial and as an industrial processes can be used as a propellant in aerosol spray, now banned in America and Europe, in refrigeration and in the various air conditioning devices system, in the foams, in cleaning solvents, and in the electric components. So these propellants actually are the naturally occurring hydrocarbons. A few products, about 10% of the today's aerosols, use compressed gases like carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide as propellant. The final element is the container, which is usually made up of steel or aluminum can. Whereas an aerosol is the suspension of defined solid particles or the liquid droplets in the air or another gas. Aerosols can be natural or can be man-made or anthropogenic. Examples of naturally occurring aerosols are the fog, mist, dust, forest exudates, and the steam. So, what does or from where does it comes? Most of the chlorofluorocarbons have been released to the atmosphere through the use of aerosol containing them and as leakages from the refrigeration equipment. Other releases may occur from the industry producing and using them and other products containing them. There are not thought to be any natural sources of these chlorofluorocarbons to the environment. So how might they affect the environment? CFCs are unlikely to have any direct impact on the environment in the immediate vicinity of their release. VOCs, that is volatile organic compounds, they may be slightly involved in reactions to produce ground-level ozone, which can cause damage to the plants and materials on the larger scale. At a global level, however, release of these CFCs have serious environmental consequences. The long lifetime in the atmosphere means that some end up in the higher atmosphere, which is called as stratosphere. Stratosphere is the layer of Earth's atmosphere. It is the second layer of atmosphere as we go upward. The troposphere is the lowest layer, which is just right below this stratosphere. The next higher layer above the stratosphere is called as mesosphere. So, in the stratosphere, where they can destroy the ozone layer, thus reducing the protection by offering the earth from the sun's harmful ultraviolet radiations. The atmosphere effect may include in terms of global warming. So global warming is a gradual increase in the overall temperature of the Earth's atmosphere, generally attributed to the greenhouse effect caused by increased level of carbon dioxide, chlorofluorocarbons, and many other pollutants. Global warming is mainly the human-caused rise of the average temperature of the Earth's climate system, and it has been demonstrated by the direct temperature measurements and by the measurements of the various effects of the warming. Greenhouse effect. It is the trapping of the sun's warmth in a planet's lowering the atmosphere due to the greater transparency of the atmosphere to visible radiation from the sun than to the infrared radiation emitting from the planet's surface. Actually, this effect of greenhouse is the process by which radiation from the planet's atmosphere warm the surface to a temperature above what it would be without this atmosphere. So radioactive gases in the planet atmosphere produce or release energy in all directions. So this effect or the amounts have been emitted is relatively very small, but the warming effect, that is in terms of global warming, is severe in this case. So effects of chlorofluorocarbons: ozone shields living organisms or the earth from the harmful effects from the sun's UV radiation, and this overall they all can result in an incidence of skin cancers, particularly in the human beings, by causing various genetic mutations in many organisms. So how might exposure of chlorofluorocarbon affect the human health? The chlorofluorocarbon enter the body primarily by inhalation of air containing CFCs, but they can also enter by ingestion of contaminated water or by dermal contact with the chlorofluorocarbons. So exposure to extremely high level of chlorofluorocarbon can result in the death. So inhalation of high level of chlorofluorocarbon can affect the lungs, central nervous system, and many heart, liver, and kidney damage diseases occur in the human beings. So there are a few symptoms of exposure to chlorofluorocarbons. The first symptom is called as the drowsiness. That is a feeling of being sleepy or lethargic. Sleepiness, नींद का ना आना, इसको कहते हैं drowsiness. Slurred speech, that is a symptom characterized by poor pronunciation of words, mumbling, or a change in the speed or rhythm during talking. For example, लड़खड़ाना या रुक रुक के बात करना, अपने words को ठीक तरह से pronounce ना करना. The next symptom, which is due to the effect of chlorofluorocarbon is called disorientation, the condition of having lost one's sense of direction. For example, a state of mental confusion. Then tingling sensation. Tingling sensation, for example, सुइयां जिस तरह चुभती हैं आपके हाथों में, वो एक जो सेंसेशन या जो वो वाली फीलिंग होती है उसको कहते हैं tingling sensation. That is restriction of the nerve impulses to an area of nerves commonly caused by leaning or resting on the parts of the body such as the legs, which is often followed by a pins or the needle. Then weakness in the limbs. Weakness is a lack of any physical or muscle strength, and the feeling that extra effort is required to move your arms, legs, or other muscles. So if the muscle weakness is the result of the pain, the person may be able to make muscles work, but it will hurt. So exposure to the high level of chlorofluorocarbons ultimately can result in the death of the organisms. Ingestion of these chlorofluorocarbons can lead to the nausea, irritation of digestive tract, diarrhea. The thermal contact with the chlorofluorocarbon can cause skin irritation and dermatitis is the skin disease. It is a common condition that has many causes and occurs in many forms. It usually involves itchy, dry skin or a rash on a swollen and the reddened skin, or it may cause the skin to blister, ooze, crust, or flake off. Example of these conditions are atopic dermatitis, which is normally called as eczema, dandruff, and contact dermatitis. So these CFCs are involved in the destruction of stratospheric ozone layer, as I have already explained with the help of a diagram in the previous slide, resulting in an increased exposure of UV radiation, which directly affect the skin, causing skin cancer. So there are some agencies who are working to control the minimize usage of this CFC in our ecosystem. That is International Agency for Research on Cancer. They has not designed any chlorofluorocarbon as a group in terms of their carcinogenicity. So they have designated chlorofluoromethane and chlorodifluoromethane as these are being not classifiable to create any carcinogenicity to the humans. So they are not considered to be the toxic. Whereas exposure to the chlorofluorocarbon at the normal background level has lead to unlikely produce any adverse effect on the human health. So what steps should be taken in order to control these potential impacts which are caused by the chlorofluorocarbons? There is a legislation which was established in 1987 in the Montreal, Canada, and it is an international agreement which obliged most signatures to completely phase out their use of CFCs by 1996. So only the developing countries were allowed to exceed this at a level of only 15% of their production pre-signing the protocol. So in this collaboration of this agency with the different countries, they make a law that all the developing countries should not exceed 15% of their CFC usage. But these releases are present in the UK, which are controlled through the UK pollution prevention and control regulations. So overall UK, government of UK is controlling all these preventions and pollution control projects. If air pollution effect. So this was all about today's lecture. Thank you very much.